Good evening, everyone. The time is 7 o'clock on August the 22nd, 2022. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Upper Dublin Board of School Directors legislative meeting for the month of August. Ms. Evans, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Ms. Evans.
Present.
Mr. Henderson.
Present.
Ms. Ioannidis.
Present.
Mr. Kessler.
Present.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Present.
Mrs. Sherpier.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Mr. Wallach.
Present.
Dr. Davis.
Excused absence this evening.
Okay, thank you.
And now if I could ask everyone to please rise, and we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States Republic for which it stands. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight will be a brief Vice President's welcome, as Dr. Davis could not be with us tonight. We are about to embark upon a new school year, and there's excitement everywhere. Halls will soon be brimming with children, and it's always great when we start a new school year. All that said, we have a fairly full agenda that we want to get through this evening, and without further ado, we're going to move directly to that agenda tonight. Normally, we would have our Student Government Association report. Because school is not in session, Ben is not here with us this evening. He'll be joining us in September, and we look forward to his first report of the year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Yanni for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach. Good evening. This evening on the board's agenda, you will see a motion to approve our comprehensive plan and our strategic action plans. So the first item, the comprehensive plan, that is a state-required document, and we worked with over 45 engaged partners or stakeholders to develop that plan. There were two major focus areas, the first being a culture of continuous improvement is necessary to ensure instructional coherence K-12. When instruction is standards aligned and staff capacity is built to meet the needs of all learners, students will demonstrate strong achievement and growth annually. And the second focus area or the priority statement is student-specific interventions and supports are necessary to help students meet grade level expectations. From that process, we then developed strategic action plans. So the comprehensive plan primarily focuses on teaching and learning, which is arguably one of the most important things we do. But we wanted to have a robust set of plans that guide all of our decision-making over the next 3 years. So working with over 60 stakeholders and engaged partners, we developed our strategic action plans in the area of teaching and learning, human resources and labor relations, stakeholder engagement, and finance, facilities, and operations. What we're asking the board tonight is to approve those goals. Those goals are on one page and will become part of the culture of the district. We'll be sharing those and referencing those as we work on initiatives, as we roll out new professional learning, as we build budgets, as we do everything in our district, because that document or those goals are really going to guide us over the next 3 years. We're in the final stages of Sandy Run Middle School construction, so the inside we would say is about 99% complete. They're working on punch list items inside. The outside is still being worked on. Right now, the parking lot that we talked about in the finance meeting last week is being worked on, and we're hopeful that the parking lot will be ready when we bring staff back next week. We had a brief ribbon cutting ceremony a few weeks ago. Tomorrow night, we're giving our neighbors on Martin Lane a tour of the building. And then after the start of the school year, we'll be releasing more information about some community tours. You should also, if you have a student at Sandy Run, we're hopeful that we can have parking there next week so that Dr. Ortiz, Mr. Pickford, and Mr. Albert can do tours for incoming students next week. We want to thank our entire community for the support of the Sandy Run project. I think it's a building that everyone can be proud of. We have two new faces that will be joining us as members of our leadership team. Ashley Martonic joins us as a house principal here at Upper Dublin High School. Specifically, she will be working with the 11th grade students. She'll be overseeing activities, and also her background in special education is going to make her a great liaison to the Student Services Department. She joined us at the beginning of July, so we're looking forward to many years of a successful relationship with Ms. Martonic. We're also going to welcome Ms. Joanna Edelman. She will soon join us as a supervisor of special education, primarily placed at Upper Dublin High School. Right now, she is a member of the Bucks County Intermediate Unit Training and Consulting staff. She is a special education teacher by trade, and she has taught in several low-incidence programs. So we're excited to welcome her, and we anticipate welcoming her sometime in September or at the very latest, beginning of October. Shar Seiverling, who was previously at the high school, will become part of the middle school team, primarily working out of the middle school. And if you remember, Sarah Feather originally announced her retirement last year, but she is staying with us, and she will continue to support us primarily at the elementary level. There are 4 retirements on the agenda tonight that I'd like to bring to your attention. Mariana Swart, high school math teacher, 36 years of service to the district. Kimberly Stern, a high school English teacher, 19 years to the district, 19 years with the district. Kathleen Starosta, an educational assistant at Maple Glen with 17 years of service to the district. And Janet Miller, who's an administrative assistant in the facilities department, is retiring just shy of 4 years of service. So we wish these team members well in their retirement. Please keep in mind that student schedules at the secondary level and homerooms at the elementary level will be available at noon on the 26th. Jitters Away for our new elementary students will take place at 2 p.m. on September 1st, and the first day of school is Tuesday, September 6th. Finally, tonight, we'd like to thank Mr. Michael Henderson for his years of service to our district on our school board. We thank him for his volunteerism and his support of our students, our faculty, our district, and our entire community. Although Mr. Henderson's service as a board member will end on October 31st, we know he will keep close tabs on what's happening with the district. A vacancy announcement and the process to fill the board seat will be released tomorrow via listserv, keeping in mind that Pennsylvania law requires that a board vacancy is filled within 30 days, and any and all deliberations about that have to happen in public. So the community should look for some information from the district tomorrow. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Wallach.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. We'll keep moving on our agenda, and our next item is our first opportunity for public participation. This opportunity is for agenda items and action items only. If anyone would like to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and place of residence, and you will have 4 minutes that Ms. Evans will track.
I'm Roland Lynn from Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. I came up here tonight not to speak on something which is on the agenda, so I'll reserve those comments for the end of the meeting. However, I would like to ask, and I don't know if it's on the agenda, I'm sure somewhere it is, or somewhere within the material that was given tonight. Can someone on the board tell me whether the Sandy Run rehab or rebuild of the school is on budget and on time? Is it meeting the requirements of time and financial stipulations that were put in place for it to be built? If someone could tell me whether it's on time and on budget, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Anita Brister, not even going to touch it. Just wanted to ask Dr. Yanni, I don't know if I missed it. Did you say the process for replacing Mr. Henderson would be posted tomorrow, but did you say there would definitely be interviews? Is that part of the process? Or did you not say that? And I guess I'm curious, in the past, I've been to probably at least 4 of these things where someone steps down early. And there have been interviews. But I'm just curious, from a legal point of view, do you have to have interviews, or can the board just deliberate in public? I mean, I would think I'm just curious about if it's a legal thing or not, and are you planning to have interviews? And Mr. Henderson, I just want to say thank you so much for serving. In another lifetime, I did 4 years on the board. It was a long 4 years. It's a lot of, I don't think if you haven't done it, well, if you attend a lot of meetings, you know what it's about, but it's a lot of paperwork. In the old days, a big stack of paper would get dropped off from a bus. A bus driver would go to all 9 board members, Art remembers this, and you were like, oh my God, I got to process all this before the meeting. But anyway, I appreciate your kind of kindness and respect to the community, and I really, really appreciate that 2 budget cycles ago, you were the only one that kind of, I don't know if you said it first or maybe I said it first, I don't know, but you basically tried to advocate for a little bit less of a tax increase by putting a little bit of the money that was going in the capital reserve, or put a little bit of that towards lower taxes. There still would have been money in the capital reserve. I appreciated that gesture because COVID was pretty tough. And then, of course, this past year, there was also tornado damage. But anyway, thank you, and I wish you the best.
Seeing no one else approaching the microphone, I will close public participation. Dr. Yanni, any responses at the moment?
So regarding Sandy Run, last week at our finance meeting, we talked about the building being on budget and on time. In fact, some facets of the project, i.e. the parking lot, the development of where the turf field is going to go, those things are being done a little bit ahead of schedule. An incredibly dry spring and summer has helped that. And even though there are some change orders that we talked about last week, it is on time and on budget. The process for replacing board members, the board does not have to hold interviews, I believe, at this time. However, the board is going to, or has decided that they will hold interviews, and that'll be part of the announcement tomorrow. There is no requirement to do that. The board could just deliberate in public and pick someone, but the board has chosen to do interviews, and I expect that, I don't expect that information will come out tomorrow.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. Any other comments from the board or anyone else? Okay, we will keep moving along. We're next up to our minutes. We have minutes from our June 20th legislative meeting. Everyone will recall that there was no legislative meeting in July, which is why we have June minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Evans, thank you. Mr. Sirota was the motion. Apologies for not acknowledging that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to the Education Committee recommendations. Ms. Sherpier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wallach. As you all noticed, the Education Committee meeting items have been put together under one header. Since we did not have an education meeting, I'm going to take things in sections. So I'd like to make a motion to approve items 5A through C first. Yeah.
We have a motion for items 5A through C on the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dr. Levinowitz, any comments or questions?
Yeah, I think it might be helpful to have a little clarification on that for the community.
So these items are the planetarium program purchases.
Yes, there are 4 program purchases that administration is recommending. These are licenses that have expired that are currently part of the planetarium programming that's delivered to our elementary students. Many of the companies that we work with were able to upgrade their programming for us. These 4 programs were unable to be upgraded because of the increased system, the higher functioning system that we have in the new planetarium. So these are, 2 of them are 50-year licenses and 2 of them are 10-year licenses through Ready to Learn grant.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Any questions from the board or any further comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Sherpier, were you going to add something? No. Okay. We have a motion and a second for items 5A through Z. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I probably should say aye as well, and I've been forgetting to do that, Ms. Evans. I apologize. I say aye as well. Ms. Sherpier, continue
All
on.
right, so then we get to conferences, student activities, and the German exchange and an exchange student. Again, that's not something we discussed before, so again, I'd like to make a motion to approve those 4 items.
We have a motion for items D, E, F, and G under number 5. Do we have a second?
I second.
Ms. Ionity seconds. Comments or questions on those?
I'd just like to make a comment on that it's great to see exchange programs and with both the German one and our students going and German students coming here, and then the full year student who's coming to visit, I believe from Chile. Yes. So glad that those opportunities are back.
Any others around the table? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Ms. Sherpier, continuing on.
Yeah, and my apologies for breaking this apart. I won't do that next time because then we have an education meeting.
No worries.
So items H through Q, they are all agreements, and I'd like to make a motion to approve items A through Q. H through Q.
We have a motion for items 5H through Q. Do we have a second?
I second.
Ms. Ionity seconds. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? Motion carries. Ms. Sherpier, I believe you have one more.
Yeah, one remaining one, that is the Shout Point agreement, and I'd like to make a motion to approve the Shout Point agreement.
We have a motion for item 5R on our agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Ionity seconds. Questions or comments from the board on item 5R?
Yeah, it might be helpful to have a little clarification on that, since that has both a an application component, as I see it, and a personnel component.
It's just one agreement through Infinite Campus. Shout Point is our messenger system. That's text, voice, and email, our communication system through Infinite Campus. The second amount there with the custom computer specialist, that's just the custom computer specialist incorporated, which is the branch of Infinite Campus that powers Infinite Campus for us, and that's our student information system.
So it's not an actual person?
It's not, no.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on item 5R? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Sherpier, thank you for all of those. Next, we're going to move on to the Finance Committee recommendations, and that would be Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. We have 11 items under the Finance Committee recommendations. All of these were discussed last week at the Finance Committee, except for item C, which is our regular monthly payments item. And I'd also like to clarify that items E, the agreement with Upper Dublin Township, and H, the assist services agreement, were both modified from the version we saw at the Finance Committee as discussed at the Finance Committee. So they were discussed, and those discussed changes have been made.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. So we have a motion on the floor for items 6A through K. That'd be a total of 11 items. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to the Personnel Committee recommendations. Dr. Levinowitz.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to approve the entire Personnel Committee with one vote. Item A is the Personnel Report. B is renaming our assistant principal positions at the high school to house principals. C is renaming the assistant principal positions at Sandy Run to house principals. D is rename the supervisor of operations position to assistant director of facilities. And then the new agreement with our superintendent of schools.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. We have a motion for the entirety of the personnel agenda for this evening. Do we have a second? Mr. Sirota, thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
I just want to take the opportunity to just briefly speak about the superintendent renewal agreement. This would take effect in July of 2023, I believe, and I think speaking for the entire board, we're very excited that we've been able to keep our superintendent for, the agreement is for 5 years, and I think we're very pleased in light of what is going on across the state in terms of the typical life expectancy in a district of a superintendent is about 3.5 years. And I know we have a great superintendent who really cares about all students, and does give us some additional stability, knowing that Dr. Yanni will be with us.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. Ms. Shabir.
Yeah, for the renaming, especially for the assistant principals, can we get a little bit more explanation as to the why behind that, and if that influences the content of the position?
So the title assistant principal is really becoming passé. Each of our current assistant principals carry a tremendous amount of weight and responsibility. While there's no change in compensation with the change in titles, this does more accurately reflect at the middle school. Each principal has a house, a grade level, and they also carry additional duties. At the high school, house principal will stay with a group of students through their entire high school career, in addition to having some other duties. So this more closely aligns with their job, and we're seeing more and more districts move away from the title assistant principal to house principal.
Thank you for that, Dr. Yanni. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the Policy Committee recommendations. Ms. Iannitti.
Okay, we have 4 first readings here. We did discuss them at length on Thursday night, and they will go through another month of policy, and they'll be back here again. So this is just for first round for these. And I make a motion to pass them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have a motion to approve the first readings on the Policy Committee recommendations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Evans, thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have a few items of other business this evening, and for that, I'm going to turn again to Dr. Levinowitz.
Okay, we have 5 items tonight under other business. Again, I'd like to make a motion to move all 5 concurrently. Item A is reluctantly school director resignation, very reluctantly, effective August 31 of 2022 of Michael Henderson. The comprehensive plan and our strategic action planning goals that our superintendent has been updating us, I think, on a monthly basis about, especially about our strategic action planning goals. The district safety coordinators, that's clear in terms of what we're doing. We are required to do that based on Act 55. And the last item is the electronic signature authorization. Move all 5.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Sirota.
I have a question on item E, the electronic signature authorization. Is this the only thing that we do electronic signatures for? Why do we need a specific authorization for this one?
So most things that get submitted to the Commonwealth, we can just simply sign and scan. Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV, if we don't do an e-signature, you actually have to print out the entirety of the contract and snail mail it in. That is the only thing that we have to approve e-signatures for. Everything else, we sign and scan right to whatever agency. The federal programs has never caught up to that.
I'm surprised you say caught up. It seems like that's more advanced. This actual signing of a piece of paper and sending it in seems like the old way to me. But if that's the only thing, then that's fine. I think maybe we should review in policy whether we want to have a more blanket authorization for this technique of signing documents. But
So believe it or not, we have to have a board motion every year. If I'm going to e-sign our federal programs, we have to have a board motion, and I actually have to send the minutes into the Department of Federal Programs to show that the board actually took action.
okay, never mind.
Any other questions? Ms. Sherpier.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the comprehensive plan and all the work that went into that and acknowledge the community's input as well as all the other stakeholders within the district staff. The one question I had is that the link on here says 22 to 22, but that's probably 22 to 25, right?
That's correct. We'll take care of that.
And then, I mean, I think the other note is that while this is a plan and it's sort of a guide, it's not cast in stone that we can't.
Correct. So the comprehensive plan, at the 1.5 year mark, we will take a look at that and adjust if necessary. Same thing with the strategic action plan goals. We'll be developing a public-facing dashboard that will show on our website how we're progressing towards meeting or exceeding those goals. If we need to change any of those goals, we'll come back and ask for approval. The comprehensive plan must be approved before we submit it to the Department of Education. I'm asking for the strategic action plans to be approved as well, just because they'll serve as seminal documents for the district.
Mr. Henderson.
Ms. Evans, I'll be abstaining from item 9A, obviously.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Talking about 9A, you know, I always agree with Ms. Brister. But again, we do agree, Anita. Mike, you will greatly, sorely be missed on the board. I've known you for many years. Something I know you've always had interest in. We've spoken about it many times, and it's you know, it's a sad time to know that you will not continue on the board. Your insight, your perspectives was extremely helpful for the entire board. So best of luck, and I know we will remain friends for many years. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we have the other business items A through E. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And is there anyone that abstains from item A?
I, of course, abstain from item 9A.
Thank you so much. Motion carries. And next, we'll move on to the Solicitor's Report and the Sunshine Act announcements. Mr. Diazio.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach. The board met in executive session this evening, beginning at 5:45 prior to this public meeting. The items that were discussed in executive session this evening were the items that were on the personnel agenda that the board approved. There were a number of items related to school safety that were discussed, and also the status of an ongoing personnel investigation. That concludes the Sunshine Act announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. We'll next move to our second opportunity for public participation. It's open to any comment. If anyone would like to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and place of residence in the township, and you'll have 4 minutes.
My name is, good evening. My name is Rubia Branco Ebert. I live on Summit Avenue in Fort Washington. I'm here today to express my utter frustration with the district, and more specifically, to the lack of and disregard for parents' concerns. I'm here to discuss the district's equity initiative curriculum. Equity is a part of critical race theory, which goes back to Marxist teachings. It is born directly out of the communist legacy. CRT embraces terms like equality, social justice, diversity, SEL, and inclusion. Equity is not to be confused with equality, which means equal opportunity. Equity refers to and strives for equal outcomes. Rather than championing learning, hard work, persistence, and commitment to achieve, equity implies skipping all those traditional factors on the American pathway to success and instead doing whatever is necessary for underachievers to become just as successful at reaching a goal as those who work very hard. This means lowering academic standards and expectations, holding achievers back through lack of advanced course offerings, bringing the slow learners up, and holding the excelling learners back, to the end of creating a homogeneous, mediocre learning experience imposed on all. This is socialist equality. This is a Marxist claptrap in which race replaces class. You, the authorities, determine who gets what according to race, ethnicity, and order status of the beneficiaries. Furthermore, these ideas also bring more division between the children, making them believe that hard work and dedication is not important, but instead race and ethnicity is what matters. I know that the school district is getting funds and grants to implement this from the Biden regime-run government. His education department's aim is to force action civics and CRT into our schools. How? The elementary and secondary school emergency relief agreement signed by the superintendent. I strongly object to it. We are here today to object Pride Month and Black Month because this only brings more division. It is an exclusion of all the other ethnicities. Me, a Brazilian, am saying that. And beliefs that are not being celebrated throughout the year. Should we now have a month to celebrate each individual race, background, sexual orientation, religious, and beliefs? If so, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have enough months in the year. We are here to object the explicit sexual content material that have been included in the school libraries. That is wrong, and we, the parents, object to it. If the sexual material available in the school libraries were to be presented to our children by a person, there would most certainly be criminal charges being filed against them. We are here to object to the social-emotional class, a class offered by a third party that has an extremely abstract curriculum, a class in which our children are directed on how they should behave, what they should think and feel socially regarding race and sexual issues. That's wrong. We are here to object your pushing of dangerous experimental vaccines. This is a strange and unacceptable practice, as vaccine injuries and deaths continue to accumulate and harm our children that have a 99.98% chance of recovery. I hold you responsible for pushing this agenda on the kids and teachers that felt forced into this. We are here to object to the countless amount of Upper Dublin Pride signs exposed throughout the school property. It is absurd. The American flag should be displayed in the school property. That is what truly represents every single person in the country and brings us together. But instead, we have signs that do not represent everybody and instead brings us into division. In conclusion, we would like to see the school providing actual education instead of trying to indoctrinate our children. If you are a public servant, you are a public official, you are a public servant. If you are a public servant, then your boss is the people. You have made an oath to the people. Therefore, you have liability over your actions. All of your objections, of our objections, are violations of the Constitution, Pennsylvania Constitution, and international laws. Because of these egregious violations, I am serving you with an intent to file against your bonds. You have 30 days to correct your actions, or I will file with your bonding company. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am, if you could leave them at the table, just leave them right there on the table, please.
Mr. Lindigan, Fort Washington. In the Wall Street Journal today was an article that I clipped out and I gave to Dr. Yanni. I would appreciate it if he's had an opportunity to look at it, to comment on it. But basically it said this, that there is a program that is extant within the United States of America, which follows on somewhat to what our previous commentator just said. It says that the unions, like the NEA and other school teacher unions, have adopted a program which is basically based on a Marxist-Leninist program. It's not just a comments, but it's a program that was instituted many years ago by Frederick Engels, heading the Communist Manifesto, as many of you know. I found it really interesting that the Russian government itself has failed to adopt it and has actually rejected it vociferously because it doesn't reach the actual program of actually educating children on basic facts and areas of intellectual pursuit. And I think it's interesting that here in America we are moving towards actual Leninist, Marxist programs, not just ideology, but programs that are being adopted through school districts across the country. So my point here is, I would hope that such things would not be endemic in our own educational process here. When I came up to this township, I came here from Philadelphia, and I chose to live in Upper Dublin because, number one, I could afford a fairly decent house at a price that I could afford. But I checked into the school district, and I considered that the Upper Dublin School District was as good as any school district in the area, including the #1 school district, which was in that days and still is Lower Merion. So my point is that my children all received a good education here in Upper Dublin. Yet, all of my children have adopted to teach their children in public school and private schools. They have opted out of public education because they have not seen the benefit of a public education that is moving in a direction that is basically uneducation. So I would really ask you to give due consideration to some of these more basic items, that the unions are not interested essentially in the well-being of education, but are primarily interested in their own well-being. Therefore, we see the constant raising of taxes, the constant imposition of programs that are 1 year accepted, and then 3 years later, we'll drop that program. It didn't work. We'll just put more money into another program, which usually doesn't work either. The real education of American students, and I'll close with this, the real American education is in the classrooms. Instead of having all these high-paid academics who have a organizational idea that you can organize education at the top, no, give the school teachers the basics that they have to achieve in the course of a year, and let them choose how to educate our children. That's where education really at the final end of this year comes. They want to teach. Don't tell them how to teach. Don't tell them. Just give them the process, the end result that you expect of them, Let them teach, let them do their job, give them the essence of what we're paying them the high salaries for, and let them do their job instead of imposing things from the top, and certainly not imposing them as coming from the union itself, which is themselves heading in the wrong direction. Gentlemen, let's have education in Upper Dublin. Let's not have ideology. Thank you.
That's right.
I agree with a lot of that. And I will read the Wall Street Journal article. And it's not what I came to speak about, but I have, my kids are grown. A lot of you know that. I'm very relieved. They did get a very good education here, but that was before critical race theory was being pushed in any public school. I mean, I'm from and I went to Catholic school, so that is slightly different, but I certainly am old enough to know that public schools used to be considered the melting pot where all groups came together. I mean, certainly in Philadelphia, there were many, many immigrants that came together in public schools, and nobody was pushing division. And it really does concern me if Upper Dublin is pushing division. So this wasn't on my original topic, but I will ask this question, and then I'll get into my real question. In the old days, I did, sometimes when my kids were here, I had 2 kids, so one would have let's say a term paper in a certain grade, let's say 8th grade. And I kept saying to the second kid, when did you start your term paper yet? When are you doing your term paper? And the second kid says, oh, no, Mom, there's no term paper. I'm like, how can there be no term paper? The other kid had a term paper. It was a good learning experience. So I would ask the superintendent, could I look at the 8th grade curriculum? And the answer was always yes, or I maybe put an email request. And they were in big books in those days, okay? I'm sounding like I'm really, really old here. But they were in big books in the barn, the building near the administration center. I'm going to assume it's all online now, but I don't know that. And I am curious if Upper Dublin is teaching what I feel are divisive, and I'm just going to use critical race theory as an example. I would like to see that curriculum. So my question would be, where could I find it? Is it available for any taxpayer or parent who wants to see it? But anyway, my real question was financial, not surprising. So Todd Stevens had something on his webpage that was informative but a little too vague for me. Basically, the 4 districts, or the 4 school districts in his legislative district, he gave a list of the amount of funding, because when we ended the school district budget, we didn't know what the funding was. And I thought that the expectation was it would be about the same, or maybe a tiny bit more than last year, the amount of funding from the state. Well, according to Todd Stevens, it was like way more than expected. It was very positive. So he said that Upper Dublin got approximately 11% increase in state funding. So that would be, if I understood his post correctly, I think that 11% would include for basic ed, for special ed, and there was something about money that has to be designated for school building safety, and I think all that totaled is the 11%. Anyway, so my question is, could you tell me what that is in terms of dollars? Is that 1.5 million? What is it? And I don't remember. I could look it up, but I didn't have time today. What was is that really an 11% increase? So in other words, what was our state funding last year? What is it going to be this year? Is it I hope it's really 11%, because that's pretty positive. Anyway, thanks.
Seeing no one else approaching the microphone, I will close public participation. We'll move on to comments and responses. Dr. Yanni, I'll start with you.
Sure. Regarding the first community member that spoke, let me start by saying anytime you want to talk, I'm available. Please reach out to me via email or through my administrative assistant. I'll be happy to sit down and talk about whatever issue. I'll start by saying I don't know that everyone in the room is going to agree, but to say that we're doing or teaching critical race theory is a misnomer. We're not teaching critical race theory. We're not teaching critical race theory. In fact, much of the equity work that we have done is around detracking. So when I started in the district in 2018, the district had an open civil rights case with an open complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. And that complaint alleged that the district disproportionately tracked students, black and brown students in lower level classes, specifically math. It also alleged that the district disproportionately disciplined black and brown students harsher than their white counterparts. All of the data that I could see substantiated those claims. So we had to work on rectifying that. So one of the things that we looked at, there were track 3 math classes. And the intent behind track 3 math classes were such that if we put kids in really small class sizes, we'll be able to remediate their skills and eventually help them improve. That was the intent. But what was happening was, after being in low-level math class year after year after year, the students didn't improve. And so it matters less about intent and actually about outcomes. So there was a movement in the district prior to my arrival to detrack the district, or I shouldn't even say detract because that's a misnomer, minimize tracking. And that work continued. We are now, we have 2 levels of math at the middle school in every grade level except for 3, and actually that's up through the high school as well. Some other work that we've done around AP courses. The College Board, who runs and, holds AP, the AP certification says that those courses should be open access. So we shouldn't be denying students the opportunity to be in those classes if they so choose. And so that is what we have done as a district. If a student wants to push themselves, they have the opportunity to stretch themselves and to reach and to take those classes. We implemented a program called Mind Up for Life at the elementary level last year. We have not implemented anything at the middle school or high school. The components of Mind Up for Life, and we talked about this pretty significantly or through our education committee last year, was to teach kids about themselves as learners, how they learn, how they respond to stress, how they can interact with one another. There is very little conversation that really is about race. It's about how to be your best self. I'd be happy to review Mind Up for Life with anyone that wants to do that. We have made some concerted efforts to diversify our staff. We have done, I think, a particularly good job diversifying our leadership team. To have a diverse teaching staff continues to be a real challenge. The number of people that are getting their education certificates at this point has dramatically dropped over the last couple of years, down by over 65%. And teachers of color, there's even fewer teachers of color. So while we continue to make concerted efforts there, it's also not an easy job to do. And we'll continue to, I listened very politely to community input or public participation, and I would appreciate the same. So when we talk about representation, representation matters. So when we choose curricular materials, we want to make sure that the diversity of the world is reflected in texts, that kids see themselves in curriculum materials. We also did a belonging survey last year, and we found that females at our high school and our students who are LGBTQIA and allies were the students that had the least sense or the weakest sense of belonging. And so it's incumbent upon us to do things that will make those students feel comfortable and welcome in our school. most of those things that we do are student-generated and student-run. I would encourage anyone who is interested in programming that we're doing to listen into our education committee meetings, because before we start anything, we always bring it before the education committee, and we also work with our staff on it. So again, anyone that ever wants to talk about any of those topics, I'm happy to speak about that. Just contact me directly or through my administrative assistant, and we'll absolutely have those conversations. Regarding the 11% increase, Mr. Leckman, can you please speak to that?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. So those numbers are correct. So basic education funding, if you remember in the final budget process, as I talked about, not having a state budget when the school district approves their final budget actually leaves us in a pretty bad place. So while it is true that we receive more funding, we are not able to budget that without guidance from the state. So yes, it is good news that our final basic ed funding is an 11% increase over last year. Special education funding is about a 5% increase over last year, and there are 2 new grants, physical safety and mental safety, that we have access to. All school districts across the state have access to that. We have $160,000 in each of those buckets, and again, going back, we had no idea those grants were going to be available to school districts when we had to approve our final budget. So it is good news, but we unfortunately weren't able to plan for some of this because the state budget wasn't passed until well into July.
Mr. Leckman, it's an 11% increase, but do you have the raw numbers? Or can you provide it the next meeting? I believe it's under 100,000 for special ed. The exact increase, and I think for BEF.
For basic education funding, it's $354,000. For special education, it's $95,000.
$95,000. Yeah, so a lot of that increase, Mr. Leckman, speak a little bit about how that 11% increase is also part of that is the PSERS contribution that the state contributes.
No,
not the 11%.
Not the 11%.
Right.
The 11% is basic education funding only. So
Right.
PSERS is a separate line item in the budget.
Right. So you said BEF, we received an additional
$354,000.
Right. And special ed under 100,000.
$95,000.
Right. And we always have to budget assuming it's level, because we never know where the budget's going to be.
When I was responding to the question, I did not, I glossed over the curriculum. But all of our curriculum frameworks, outlines, and the primary and secondary resources that we use in our classroom, they all are online on the Teaching and Learning website that Mr. Hoffman and his team make sure are updated. And just as a reminder, the Pennsylvania School Code requires us to bring before the board textbooks for approval. So again, Teaching and Learning website, all of our outlines, frameworks, and primary and secondary resources are there. Again, if you review them and have any questions, I know Mr. Hoffman feels the same. We would both be happy to speak to anyone that would like to speak about those.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. Thank you, Mr. Leckman. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Henderson.
Mr. Wallach, may I have permission to share my letter of resignation?
That's completely up to you, Mr. Henderson. Of course.
Regretfully, I offer my letter of resignation from the Upper Dublin School District Board of School Directors effective August 31st, 2022. I was offered and accepted a promotion by my employer that necessitates business travel 3 out of 4 weeks per month, with 1 week per month outside the U.S. Given this level of physical absence from Upper Dublin, I will be unable to fulfill my school board director responsibilities in a manner that our students, teachers, administrators, and parents deserve. This public service opportunity has been a blessing for myself and my family. I want to thank my fellow school board directors, past and present, who are tireless, volunteer public servants whose sole focus is bringing the highest quality of education to all of our Upper Dublin students. I thank our superb school district administrators and teachers led by Dr. Steve Yanni, who lead our district with professionalism, integrity, and a laser-like focus on putting our students first. I also thank our amazing students who persevered through a pandemic, a tornado, and related displacements with grace and positivity. Finally, I thank our parents and our residents of Upper Dublin who gave me the opportunity to serve for almost 3 years. Even our UD neighbors who may have disagreed with our policy and budget decisions presented their concerns with professionalism, respect, and equanimity. Upper Dublin stood apart in this level of civility in our school board meetings and communications, and I pray that this continues as we remain UD strong and united. All the best going forward. Michael A. Henderson, citizen of Upper Dublin.
Mr. Henderson, thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to share around the board table at all? I want to take this opportunity, Dr. Levinowitz stole a little bit of my thunder, but I think I will comment here, to thank Mr. Henderson for his service, for his integrity, for his mind, his participation. It is bittersweet. We will miss not having you sit here at this table, interact and participate in these meetings, but we know that you'll be involved, as Dr. Levinowitz says, and we look forward to that other involvement. At the same time, I'd like to add my personal comments that I do very much look forward to being able to sit up here for as long as I'm up here with Dr. Yanni, and to have Dr. Yanni continuing to helm and lead this school district. I want to thank him, and I look forward to his continued professionalism, his guidance, his leadership, and his integrity. And I personally want to say that I'm just ecstatic that he will be at the helm of this ship for many years to come. Any other comments around the table? Dr. Yanni.
So I would like to thank the board for your trust in me. We've been through a lot together. We've been through a water crisis, a pandemic, and a tornado. I'll be honest with you, the morning after the tornado, I stood in front of Upper Dublin High School and thought, how are we ever going to get out of this one? But through it all, in short order, we made sure that kids were back in school, and we even built a building in the middle of all of it. We haven't always agreed. Sometimes we learn to agree to disagree, and I've even learned to read Mark Sirota over the last 4 years. I do look forward to working members when we don't agree on things. I think anytime that there is agreement, that's great, but where there's disagreement, there can be growth and find common ground. It really is a pleasure to work with this board. It's a pleasure to work with my amazing executive leadership team that we have built over the last couple of years, and I couldn't do this work without them. I also couldn't do the work without our entire staff, and I'll specifically say Robin Picari and Helene Cape, the officers of UDSD, and Mo Schmidt and Doug Sample, the co-presidents of UDEA. We don't always agree. But we have learned to work as a team. And I think that's what works, because we call ourselves one team. Many parts making up a whole. So thank you all. I look forward to many years to come, many more policy committee meetings. You know, that's my favorite. And I will do everything I can to continue moving the district forward with the help of everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. Any other comments before we move forward? Okay. We have a few informational items that we've grouped together on our agenda. The first is our enrollment report. The second is our liaison committee reports. You will note that many of those do not have reports this month, as many of those organizations did not meet over the summer, but there are some reports there. We also have our committee meeting approved minutes for the June 1st, 2022 Policy Committee meeting and the June 13th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. They were approved by those committees at those committee meetings, so they're here for informational purposes only. And lastly, we have our schedule of upcoming meetings. Before I get to that, is there anyone on the board that would like to talk about any of their liaison committee reports? Just to add anything, we always offer that opportunity. Ms. Iannitti.
Yes, so there was no report because nothing happened over the summer with these, with the equity groups, but I'm starting to see the emails, so if you're interested, check your email, contact the principal where your child is, and find out what's going on.
We appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, I will make an announcement of our upcoming meetings. We have our Education Committee meeting on Wednesday, September the 7th. That'll be immediately followed by our Policy Committee meeting. We have our Finance Committee meeting that is on the agenda schedule for Tuesday, September 13th. I believe, Dr. Yanni, that might be adjusted, is that correct?
It may be adjusted, and if it is, it'll be adjusted in enough time that the community will know, and we'll make sure the requisite advertisements are done.
Excellent. And our next legislative meeting will be on Monday, September the 19th at 7 o'clock here in the Cardinal Room. With that, I want to thank everyone for their participation this evening, and we are adjourned.